Welcome, Sens Talk.
Here comes Smith with a pass across. Oh, he scores! He bats it in! Tim Stutzler wins it for Ottawa. Mitchell Grant is going to put the finishing touches on an Ottawa win. See you later. Go Sens, go.
Welcome to Sens Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host today. I'm going to take a look at the Claude Giroux contract extension situation as, yes, Claude Giroux, the Claudefather, G-Money baby, is a free agent coming this July 1st. So if Ottawa, for whatever reason, and we'll talk about it in this video, does not sign Claude Giroux before Canada Day, he will be free to sign with any other team in the National Hockey League. We would like to avoid that. Spoiler alert. But before we get into the video and I break down what Claude Giroux did this year, what Claude Giroux has done in his career as an Ottawa Senator, and as well take a look at what a potential contract extension might look like for Claude Giroux and the Ottawa Senators, I want to say thank you to Dylan Puckniak and Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment for sponsoring Sens Talk, as Sens Talk is proudly presented by Dylan Puckniak, Ottawa's exclusive realtor with Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment. Providing a bilingual real estate service that serves the Ottawa-Gatineau community, Dylan Puckniak is also specialized in supporting professional athletes that come and go in our city, providing a service that takes care of the people at the highest level. For a realtor experience puts you and your needs first. Visit dylanpuckniak.kw.com. That is dylanpuckniak.kw.com to find out more today. Again, thank you to Dylan Puckniak and Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment for sponsoring Sens Talk. So let's take a look at the good and bad around Claude Giroux and his last year with the Ottawa Senators, and overall his 3 seasons as an Ottawa Senator. So last year, he played 81 games, ranked 3rd amongst forwards with the Ottawa Senators, averaging 18-12 on the ice per game. That is 4th amongst forward. So a key player in all positions there clearly. Had 15 goals last year and 50 points. So top 5 in points, top 8 in goals, top 5 in shots as well at 4th with 138. He led the Senators in faceoff wins with 600. Holy cow. We'll talk about that in a few minutes here. But Claude Giroux by far, and I mean this, by far, is easily Ottawa's best faceoff man. And as we saw in the playoffs, the Ottawa Senators don't need less guys that can win faceoffs. They need more. So right away, you can kind of see why I want to see a guy like Claude Giroux stick around. But it does have to make sense. And we'll talk about that later on. But on top of that, there are a couple of negatives. Giveaways, and we'll talk about this later as well, but giveaways ranked 2nd on the Ottawa Senators, just behind Tim Stutzler, with 66 giveaways this past season. His Corsi for percentage at 5-on-5, 3rd best amongst forwards at 52.71, and scoring chances for at 5-on-5, 5th best amongst the Ottawa Senators at 51.88. That stat basically means when he was on the ice, more often than not at 5-on-5, the Ottawa Senators were getting some good scoring chances, which shows that Claude Giroux, even again, in the latter half of his career, he's 36, right? He is a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt about it, but he's not getting any younger, obviously. So still at this age, the fact that he can carry the possession, which, again, he is known for, he's a great puck possession guy. He's easily one of Ottawa's best forwards that are, able to naturally just enter the zone and keep possession of the puck, and it shows there with that. So this is a guy that is a net positive, not a net negative when it comes to the offensive side of things. And we saw that continue in the playoffs this year, averaging just under 18 minutes of ice time, scoring a goal, the first goal at home in 8 years in the playoffs. On the power play, an absolute electric shot through a couple bodies, had 5 total points, 7 hits, and a block as well in that playoff debut as an Ottawa Senator. Face-off percentage at just under 46%. That is abysmal. Tim Stutzler, as I've already spoken about before on this channel. By the way, shout out youtube.com/SensTalk. If you're not subscribed, please do so. But, that obviously is not going to cut it. But, again, that is a one-off. Claude Giroux, throughout his entire NHL career, has been one of the best face-off men in the National Hockey League. So I don't know if that's more so about just the team in general struggling, the positions that the Sens were taking face-offs in, or maybe the Leafs just dominated us in the face-off circle and have the better face-off guys. That's also something we have to take into account. But again, that is a negative, yes. His biggest attribute that he brings to this team, his face-off ability, was not up to par in the playoffs. So that is something that should be, taken a note about. But again, I like to focus more so, and we'll talk about this when we take a look at his whole career as an Ottawa Senator. I like to focus more so on the bigger picture, the larger sample size. The playoffs obviously are important, more important than the regular season. No doubt about that. But it's a small sample size, right? And the matchups are so different. Again, when you're playing the same team in the playoffs, in that type of atmosphere, it's completely different. So, again, I don't see why that face-off rate will be at that rate in the regular season next year. But again, it is a little shocking it was that low. 5-on-5 Corsi for percentage, very high though. It's under 65% basically. And 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage is just under 55% as well. So as you can see, Claude Giroux is a guy that's a net positive still. And when he has the puck, the Ottawa Senators, more often than not, are going to be able to generate some offensive chances and at the very least, hold possession of the puck. So at least they're not going back the other way and scoring on us. So he's not a net negative defensively. Now, as an Ottawa Senator, he's played 245 games. My goodness, did those games ever fly by? It feels like it was yesterday during the summer of Dorion when Claude Giroux signed with Ottawa Senators. Still, in my opinion, and I don't think anyone would disagree with this, the biggest free agent signing in Ottawa Senator history. I don't think that's a hot take. I think that's the reality. And Claude Giroux, in his career as an Ottawa Senators, lived up to the contract and then some. I mean, again, this guy's playing his last few years in the National Hockey League right now, okay? In my opinion, biggest reason why I want him to be an Ottawa Senator is I want him to be an Ottawa Senator for life. I want him to retire as an Ottawa Senator. It would be really crappy to have him only here for 3 years, to see what he helped to build here in Ottawa, and then finally when we get to the playoffs, to see him leave. Now again, the contract has to make sense for both sides, but I think you know what I'm saying here. This guy's been so valuable for the team on and off the ice. And again, as you can see here, 245 games, averaging over 19 minutes of ice time per game. So this is a guy that's been a key forward for the Ottawa Senators in all situations. Again, all situations. So, you know, you're going to lose a guy like Claude Giroux. Again, and we'll talk about this later, if you lose a guy like Claude Giroux, I don't think he's going to be a top 6 guy next year, but you're still losing a guy that could eat up 15 to 20 minutes of ice time, contributes a lot to the offensive side of things for the Ottawa Senators. And, you know, 193 points in those 245 games, nothing to laugh at whatsoever, 71 goals. So you're losing a key offensive contributor to a team that needs more offensive contributors, not less. As well, shooting percentage, 13.27. Face-off percentage in those 245 games as an Ottawa Senator, just under 60% at 59.12. Easily, by far, Ottawa's best face-off men the last 3 years. And again, having him in that room and in that practice and on the ice, just in the games as well, to win face-offs. But again, in the practice and in that room, the work with Shane Pinto, the work with Tim Stützle, the work with Ridley Gregg, our young centers, that is so valuable. And I don't really think you could put a dollar, figure on that, to be honest with you. You have one of the best face-off guys in the National Hockey League on your team, a first ballot Hall of Famer. You got a young team right now. That is exactly what you want with your young players. So over the last 3 years, we've seen why that is the case, why we want that to continue. And again, just like I just said, that's why we want it to continue, right? Takeaways, 124. So, this is a guy that can still hold up his own defensively as well. While 5-on-5 Corsi for percentage at 54.53 and 5-on-5 scoring chances for at 53.78. So again, this year wasn't a fluke. He's been so consistent every year as an Ottawa Senator, just contributing like a machine, basically. I mean, my goodness, I always say it with Claude Giroux. This guy is aged like a fine whiskey. The older he gets, the better he is, So what a player this guy is. And again, we'll talk about it in a few minutes here in the second half of the video, but the contract has to make sense. But again, you really don't want to lose a guy like Claude Giroux over $500,000 or so. That's all I'm going to say for now. I won't spoil what I'm going to say later on. But a few key notes from the good. That is Claude Giroux and what he's done as an Ottawa Senator. He's played nearly every single year, all the games, except this year. Other than that, has played 82 games the other 2 years. So this is a guy that has all the reason in the world to miss games. As a guy in the last 5 years, probably, as a 36-year-old in his NHL career, the fact that he's played every game, basically, I mean, let's give him a round of applause. That is so impressive. The mental and physical toll that takes on a guy, especially at that age, very impressive. So that really just shows, I always say this about Claude Giroux, and this really shows this. He's got that Mamba mentality, you know what I mean? He's just all business. You won't see him celebrating unless, the goal is a big one. If it's, even if it's a tying goal, half the time he doesn't sell you know what I mean? This guy's all business. And that's what we need on a young team like the Ottawa Senators that's starting to mature, starting to get better, starting to get to that next level. And Claude Giroux, in my opinion, has to be around to help this team continue getting to that next level. And on the note, he's a key leader in the room, no doubt about that. I had Dean Brown on the show the other day. He said this Ottawa Senator locker room is, in his opinion, the tightest locker room he's seen in 30 plus years here in the nation's capital. I don't know about you. Getting rid of the guy like Claude Giroux, who Steve Stamkos and Travis Green both said is integral to this room and the team, and every single player on the Ottawa Senators, Tim Stützle, Kachuk, etc., say it's like a brother to them, like a father, like this locker room is like a brotherhood, right? You can't lose one of those brothers. That's gonna have, in my opinion, some really bad effects on the locker room. So again, if he walks, this is a business. They lost a guy like Josh Norris. It shouldn't stop them from, making the playoffs, making the necessary adjustments to be competitive moving forward. But again, on a 1 or 2 year deal, and we'll talk about that later, a guy like Claude Giroux, you got to keep around, especially because, again, on the ice, he's still contributing more than, I think we expected at this point in his NHL career. And then off the ice, there's just such a positive impact that he can bring to that Senators locker room. Now, in terms of faceoffs again, I want to really zoom in on this. He led the Ottawa Senators in faceoff wins last year with 600. The closest Senators center to Claude Giroux was Shane Pinto with nearly 200 less, with 444 faceoff wins this year. That is absurd. Think about that for a sec. Just think about that for a sec. You have a guy like Shane Pinto, who's known for faceoffs, nearly 200 less than Claude Giroux. You can't lose a guy like Claude Giroux for that reason alone. And again, people are going to say he can't keep up, and we'll talk about that in a sec. It's not necessarily true, to be honest with you, when you take a look at the stats. But, people say he can't keep up. People say he's going to get older. People say we need a younger, fresher player. All right, fair points. But again, at the same time, name me the person that's going to step up and take the faceoffs in those key moments. I'm waiting. Comment below. Pause the video and comment below. I'm waiting. Because you can't find anyone on this roster that can do that. Now, in free agency, the only one that really comes to mind maybe is Sam Bennett. Good luck in that bidding war to get a guy like Sam Bennett. It's far from a guarantee to get a guy like that, right? So, Claude Giroux, there's mutual interest. He's been here for 3 years. He's from here, basically. He's, from the Ottawa area. His family's living here now. There's so many reasons to keep him. But in my opinion, again, he can still produce offensively, and the faceoffs are so key. Again, this team has struggled to win faceoffs throughout the year, and it really, again, that was one of their reasons they failed in the playoffs, frankly, right? You can't afford to lose a guy like Claude Giroux, again, purely because you need a guy like that around these players to help continue to develop their faceoff abilities. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, people say with Claude Giroux, he can't skate, he can't keep up. Well, actually, not really true. I was a little surprised when I was taking a look at this, and shout out to Trent Reynard for his help compiling these stats, including this one here. Amongst Senators forwards, he was 6th in average speed at just under 23 miles per hour at 22.55. And in terms of number of bursts over 20 miles per hour, he was 8th on the Ottawa Senators, 57 bursts. Key thing, though, is Brady Tkachuk was below Claude Giroux in both of those categories. So are you going to say Brady Tkachuk is a slow player that can't keep up? No, I don't think so, right? So is Claude Giroux the fastest guy on the team? No. Is Claude Giroux a guy that is a liability that holds his team back? Also no. Both can be true. That's why I see Claude Giroux as a guy that's in the middle 6, right? A guy that can be, on that second line, on that third line, but not on the top line. Because a guy like Tim Stützle and a guy like Brady Tkachuk need a speedy winger there. Particularly Tim Stützle needs a speedy winger there. And we'll talk about that in the future, in a future video. As you saw my last video with all the appetizers on my 5 key things the Ottawa Senators have to do this summer. We'll talk about free agent forwards we can target in the near future here at youtube.com/SensTalk. But again, I must say, Giroux is more than fine in that middle 6 still. It all kind of just depends on what that contract looks like. Now, a couple of negative things I just wanted to point out. Claude Giroux's 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage this year was 10th amongst forwards at 48.55. So that is a reason for concern, that his individual expected goals for percentage among some of the worst on the Ottawa Senators amongst forwards. And most importantly, the Ottawa Senators were bottom 3 in the National Hockey League last year on 5-on-5 scoring. So you definitely want to have guys on this team that help change that, not guys that continue to keep that the status quo. So is that solely on Claude Giroux? No, but it's certainly a negative part of his game. Again, not every player has only positives. There's no such thing. There's always going to be negatives when it comes to players, and that's one of his. Another one is Claude Giroux was 7th on the Senators for scoring chances on the team with 113, not in the top 6. So that is concerning for me, purely because, again, Claude Giroux was playing top 6 minutes last year and wasn't getting top 6 scoring chances, right? So that is a little concerning to me, which is why I think on a third line role, more than perfect. Now, before I continue and take a look at the contract, I just want to say thank you, Keep Smoked Meats, for sponsoring Sens Talk. As Sens Talk is brought to you by Keep Smoked Meats, the best smoked meat in the Ottawa area. During a process that takes over 150 hours while using the highest grade beef, Keep Smoked Meats smokes their meat on top of a mix of Southern American charcoal and Keep signature flavored wood chips, leaving you with a savory Montreal-inspired smoked meat. But the best part, getting it is so easy. Just go to keepsmokedmeats.com, find the smoked meat package you're looking for, press order, and boom! Within days, you'll have freshly made, locally produced smoked meat dropped off right at your doorstep. So check out keepsmokedmeats.com for the best tasting smoked meat experience in Ottawa today. Now, going into this free agency class, the Ottawa Senators roughly have $18 million of cap space to work with. Now, keep in mind, they have a few RFA contracts to get done, like Levi Merlin, Tyler Kleven, Fabian Zetterlund, and of course, free agents like, Claude Giroux, amongst others. So just keep that in mind. However, Bruce Garriock reported the other day that Nick Jensen, unfortunately, and this really does suck, is going to go and get a surgery this summer with potentially a hip or knee injury. Again, they're not really specifying, whatever, that's their business. But again, no guarantee that Jensen not only starts, or is ready to go, for training camp, but there's no guarantee he even starts the regular season. He might go on the LTIR, which is what Garriock suggested, which might open up a few more $1 million in cap space. Now, that is just something to just keep in mind. Again, no guarantee there, but something to keep in mind. 18 could potentially go to roughly $22 million, just saying. But, on that note, you have to keep in mind that this summer, you got to sign your guys that are RFAs. That should probably take Linen, $1 million, Zetterlund 1.5, Kleven 2, so that's $4 to $5 million, just ballparking it roughly, $4 to $6 million. So now you're left with 12 to 15 potentially, depending on the LTIR situation. So now you already know you need to get a top 6 guy. That's not going to cost less than $6 million. So that's $6 million gone. You potentially need to get a right-handed defenseman for $3 to $4 million. So now you're only working with a few $1 million here. And you also have to make some other adjustments, potentially, in the depth. You have guys like Nick Cousins that are up for contract and whatnot as well. So, again, Claude Giroux, according to Bruce Garriock and league executives, potentially can command $4 million on his next contract extension. I don't know if I can do that for more than a year. If you can do it for a year, the Ottawa Senators can make it work. They can make it work for a guy like Claude Giroux. You can find $500,000 elsewhere to keep him around for another year, and then hopefully next year he takes even more of a pay cut. Again, I think he deserves a bit of money, more than I think we were expecting on his next contract when we signed him 3 years ago, because he's been so dominant as an Ottawa Senator, and he still has a lot left in the tank, and it's not like he's trailing off, riding with fumes, basically, right? This guy still has a lot left in the engine, and should get compensated for such, right? And again, a lot of other teams would sign this guy, so let's not act like Claude Giroux is not making that clear to the Ottawa Senators that, again, he wants to get paid what he deserves as well. And I think $3 to $4 million is fair. So if we're talking a contract that is 1 year, you can make $4 million work. I'd love to do something at 2 years for $3 million, because again, I think even if Giroux trails off, $3 million with the cap going up, I'm more than fine with going into after next year. So that's where I'm at. I'd love to do a 2 year at $3 million. 1 year at 4 at the most, but 3.5 is kind of like where I'm very comfortable with. 3.5 and below would be perfect, but $4 million is like at that edge there again, because we have some guys to sign. We have to bring in some guys as well to help bolster this team. So bit of a slippery slope, but a guy like Claude Giroux is worth making it tight and making it tough to work out the whole roster and cap situation, because he's so valuable to this team. There's so many traits he brings to this team and this locker room that you can't put a price tag on, right? So, unfortunately, for the Ottawa Senators, this is one of those good problems to have. You have a lot of talent, and you have a certain amount of money to keep all that talent, right? So, to steady Steve Stamkos, I hope he can figure this out. I think he will. Again, Bruce Garriock said that, Giroux and his representatives and the Sens organization will meet here. Well, not here, but they'll meet in Buffalo during the draft combine in early June. So, I think we could see an extension before the draft, in my opinion. Again, I don't have really any concern about Claude Giroux and Ottawa getting this done. I think it will get done. It's more of a matter of what the dollar sign will look like and the term will look like. But again, Giroux and his family are here. He chose here, in my opinion anyways, it seems, to retire in his hometown team, basically, right? He's born in the Ottawa area. So I think they get this done. I think they get it done for 1 or 2 years at $3 to $3.5 million. And I think that's just very, very fair for both sides. It doesn't keep the Ottawa Senators in a cap hell situation. It allows that flexibility while also compensating Claude Giroux for his services. Again, he deserves... Yes, he should make 6 to 6.5 like he already did. He's making half of what he did on his previous contract. So he's taking a very massive pay cut. I think it's a fair pay cut because, again, he's still getting compensated very well for what he will likely be on Ottawa Senators next year, a third-line winger or center. Now, with that, I want to just say thank you to The Bunker for sponsoring Sens Talk. Sens Talk is brought to you by The Bunker, Ottawa's premier golf simulator bar. Whether you're working on your game or just looking for a fun outing with friends, The Bunker offers a welcoming atmosphere, knowledgeable staff, great drinks, and a top-tier golfing experience. Make sure to visit one of their 2 locations, either in the heart of the Glebe or in the East End, just off the Anderson Road exit. Book your tee time today at golfbunker.ca. So yeah, just back to the main point. Ultimately, I really, really want Claude Giroux back. I think it would be a massive, catastrophic loss for the Ottawa Senators on and off the ice, but it just has to make sense within the structure of our roster and our cap situation. Again, in my opinion, you're signing him to be a third-line guy, not a top-line guy, and I think the $3 million range really does reflect that. So with that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. How do you feel about a potential Claude Giroux extension? How much would you sign him for how long as well? And also, is there anyone in the Sens army that doesn't want to bring Claude Giroux back? I can't imagine it, but let me know if you're one of those few potentially down below. Now with that, I'll speak to you all very, very soon. Go Sens, go.